Hi, everybody. Today we are answering the question, what to do today, right now, to have a good tomorrow. If you are a caregiver who's having one crisis happen after another and another and another and another, and honestly, you're just beside yourself wondering, when is this ever going to stop? So if you are a caregiver, you may be one of those people who experience ongoing emergencies or things that are time sensitive to the person that you care for. But in the scope of your life, not knowing how to use the remote to turn on the television may not be an emergency that necessitates your parent calling you 10 times at work. Now, a lot of these events turn you into what I call an emergency responder, right? So it's like the guys, you call 911 and they show up, right? Well, your parents may be training you to be in that role for them, or maybe your spouse or somebody else. Now, on the other hand, you may have also accepted these commitments and you're realizing that, wow, this is not working anymore for me. So if you're in this place of crisis and ongoing emergencies, how do you stop and take a break and recalibrate and rebalance your life? Because being in this position, it can be an exhausting place mentally and physically. And there's a saying that urgency is the enemy of planning for the future or of the future. Because if you're this caregiver and you're constantly running from here to there to there to there to there, you don't have any times to make plans, right? And if you did make plans, you probably wouldn't have time to implement those plans and to put them in place. So in this video, I'm going to share some recent stories that caregivers have shared with me. And I'm going to give you 3 specific tips to put context around how do you eliminate all of these emergencies and all of these crazy crisis situations that just keep happening and that result in you not having a life. I'm Pamela D Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. Please click below, click to like this video, click to share this channel, and also please comment. I will respond to your comments. By you clicking and following and commenting, you help other people in similar care situations or needing care situations find their way here to my YouTube channel where there are over 800 videos. So let's look at a couple of examples of caregivers that have gotten themselves into situations that just are not working out. So let's say that your significant other has a sibling who needs 24/7 care. Maybe they're developmentally disabled and they're 60 years old and you're caring for them because you live with your significant other, and your significant other just expects you to give up your job and give up your life to care for their sibling. So you've basically given up your income, given up your way of life. One of your family members died and you don't even have enough money to go to the funeral. And you're thinking, wow, this is not working out anymore. Or maybe you are a spouse who's been in a 20-year marriage and your spouse's health keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And now they need total care. And you've done this for so long, but now your health is starting to fail. So let's say you're 65 or 70 and you're looking at the last 20 years of your life and you're looking at the next 20 years of your life and you're thinking, I have been this dedicated caregiver. Where is there time for me in all of this? So maybe you're drained. You're thinking, I should put my loved one in a care community, but man, I feel guilty. Is that what married people are supposed to do? But you're trying to figure a path forward. Or maybe you're in the middle of all these, right? You are a adult child who's been a caregiver for your parents for maybe 10 or 15 years. And you're in a similar situation where you've been putting your needs last. And the problem is the health of your parents is continually getting worse and you're having to spend more time and more time and more time. And you're kind of at this juncture where you're like, if I go any further, I'm not even going to be able to take care of myself. How logical is this? How responsible is this of me? And honestly, what have I gotten myself into? So if you're a caregiver, all of these competing demands, right? Your job, caring for your parents, a sibling, your love relationship, they can result in a life that's just unbalanced, right? So what is it about caregiving in these times of crisis when you're continually doing that kind of sucks caregivers in? It pulls you deeper and deeper underwater into quicksand where you're taking on all these responsibilities, but they're not yours, right? Other people are putting their problems on you and you're accepting and saying yes and you're going along with it. Why are you doing that? Well, because it's easy, right? It's easy to get caught up in this daily grind of life where people need you, they want you to do something and you're just like, yeah, I'll do it, I can handle it. And then where do you end up? You end up in the place where you are today where you're wondering like, how can I stop this hamster wheel of just responding to one crisis after another and all of these requests from other people who keep asking for more and more and more? Well, one way that you do this is you have to shift your thinking, right? I know so many caregivers who say, oh, Pamela, I've given up on my life. I've given up on doing anything I want. I've given up on my goals because of this whole caregiving thing that I'm doing. You have to pause and shift your thinking to realize that you have value and that what you want has value. So let's talk about 3 very specific things you can do. Number 1 is put your life on paper. Get out a piece of paper, list all of your commitments in the left column. And your commitments are things that you say, oh, I have to do this. Like, oh, I have to care for my elderly parents. I have to care for my spouse, my siblings. I have to work to support my family. I have to care for my children. I have to cook dinner every night. I have to take my kids to hockey on Friday nights or whatever else is on that list. Anything that you feel like you have to do that you cannot just forget about, put on that piece of paper. You might be surprised by how many things you have on there. So when you think about this, one of these little have to do's, right, may not be a big deal. But the problem is if you do this and you have 10 or 15 or 20 have to do's, you have too much to do. So there's a point where this is physically and mentally draining and it's affecting your health and your well-being. So there comes a point for you where you have to, if you want to have a good life or a better life or a less stressful life, you're going to have to make a choice. You're going to have to choose to continue being this caregiver in times of crisis who keeps saying yes, 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 who keeps showing up, who keeps giving up everything in your life so that you can do things for other people. Or you have to look at this piece of paper that you created with that list of I have to do's, and you have to start eliminating some of those. You have to start taking away all the things that you have to do. So how do you do this? So you got the haves on the left side. On the right side, start asking yourself these questions for every I have to do this. Does doing this make me happy? Am I doing this for myself, another person, for my family? And if I'm doing it, why am I doing it? Why do I feel like I must do this? Then the more important question, does the time that I contribute or devote to this have an equal or greater response back or outcome or result that is going in a positive direction? Now, if you're a caregiver, that may be a really hard one to answer because you may have to define what this degree of positivity means or what this positive direction means. And then number 2 is you want to look at what I call diminishing returns. So there's something called the law of diminishing returns. And what this means is, for example, if you continue to add more and more and more projects to your life, right? There's a point where you can handle things. And then there gets to be a point where you can't handle things, which means that adding one more thing to your list is not going to make you better about getting all of those things done on your list. So you can also think of this as balance. You put effort in, you get effort back. So let's use a caregiving example for this. Let's say that your aging parent had surgery and they're coming home from the hospital and they're weak, right? So they need to regain their strength and their abilities that they had before they went into the surgery. And so the doctor wrote an order for a physical therapist. Physical therapist comes to the house. They show your mom and dad the exercises that they need to do to regain their strength and their mobility and their balance. You say, you know what, I'll just create a spreadsheet. I'll create a spreadsheet and we'll put pictures, and mom and dad, you can just use this spreadsheet every day and you can check off what you're doing and how many times you're doing it. And your parents like, oh my gosh, thank you so much for doing that. I've got pictures, I've got a spreadsheet. I'm going to do this every day because I want to get better. So input, output. What does this mean for you? It means that your parent is going to regain their strength. So that means that you no longer have to do their laundry because they can pick up the laundry basket and they can walk up and down the stairs to get to the washer and dryer. And they can take the sheets off their bed and they can wash them and they can put the sheets back on their bed. And they can sweep their floors and they can do more things around the house, vacuum. So what this means is that your participation in, going to the physical therapy appointment at the house and making the spreadsheet and everything had a really good positive effect because your parents were willing to put in their time too. Now let's look at the exact opposite situation. Same thing, mom or dad come home, physical therapist comes, you give them the spreadsheet, and they're not doing anything to help themselves. Even with enormous amounts of encouragement and motivation, and you calling your parents every day, reminding them to exercise, and you stopping by and offering to do exercises with them, they're like, we're just not going to do it. So instead of you doing less, like in the first situation, because your parents were regaining their strength, right? In this situation, your parents are becoming physically weaker and they are doing less and less and less for themselves. And as a result, your parents expect you to do more and more and more and more. So you were doing the laundry, now you're making their bed. They used to have the strength to stand up in the kitchen to make their meals. Now they're tired all the time and they don't want to get out of the chair. They want to watch TV all day. Now they expect you to make their meals, create the grocery list, go to the grocery store and get the groceries, clean out their refrigerator, take out the trash, clean the house. A million other things, right? They're becoming more dependent on you. So when we think of how this situation started, right? An operation or an accident. The problem with caregiving is simple decisions or simple steps may not be that simple because we don't look at the consequences or what can happen, or we don't ask enough questions from doctors. So in this situation where the parents are doing less and you're doing more, it's as if that operation had a really negative effect on your parent. So if you take a step back, should the question have been, should my parents have this operation? What is the effect of this operation on my parent? Because honestly, the decision of whether to have surgery or not have surgery, it may not be as simple as you might think. Because here's a key point. The better your physical condition is before you have surgery, the more quickly you will recover. If your parent has a lot of health issues and they are weak and they're not doing well before surgery, they're probably not going to be physically better or stronger after surgery. They are going to have to really commit and be motivated to work really hard to get better, right? And so the question is, if they weren't willing to do that before surgery, if they weren't willing to exercise and try to get better then, right? How likely is it that after this surgery, they're going to be willing to put forth that effort or even able to put forth that effort? So you can put a decision to have surgery or not have surgery into this category of law of diminishing returns. Will one more surgery or one more treatment improve quality of life? Or is it going to make it worse or more difficult or harder for your parents or harder for you as the caregiver? So it's important in all caregiving decisions to think like of the before and the after effects. So although an operation may seem like, well, I guess we have to do this, right? It's the most straightforward path from A to B. You have to ask the questions. You have to have the conversations with the doctor about the potential results. So questions like, is the after effects of the surgery, what does the recovery look like? Is it something that we think my mom or dad's going to be able to do? Ask your parents. Understand what it really is going to take to recover and how much pain there's going to be. You know, is your parent going to be just so sick that all they're going to want to do is lay in bed and watch TV? If that's the case, then maybe surgery isn't the best thing. Is the surgery going to improve their quality of life or just extend their life in a situation where they're just more helpless and not feeling well and not happy? If so, is it worth it? And then for you, the caregiver, what are the after effects of this surgery on you, specific to more work, more responsibilities, trying to motivate your parents? Is it really something that you're willing and able to take on without hiring additional help or moving your parents to a nursing home after that hospitalization or moving them to assisted living? Because when you think of the law of diminishing returns and balance in your life, right? Many caregivers are going to say, well, that's selfish. I shouldn't think like that. I should just be helping my parents and, doing whatever they need. Well, you've got to realize that there are practicalities to everything, right? Just because you do this isn't going to make something better. So as a caregiver, you control this law of diminishing returns for yourself, meaning taking on more and more and more and more, and your life is getting worse, 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 worse. Just as the person who needs care controls it for themselves. What are they willing to do? Because so many times caregivers or family members feel like they have to do this thing, right? And yet they don't understand the short and the long-term effects. And so it's really important to evaluate all of this. And that brings us to number 3, which is take the time to really think about and consider and confront the realities of every situation, of every problem that you're trying to solve. Now, you may say, Pamela, we don't have time to think. We can't do that. Well, if you want to stop caregiving in crisis, constantly responding to things, being that emergency responder, specific to caregiving and the health of your parents and the person that you take care for, confronting the complex ideas of declining health is really important. And I admit, sometimes we just do not want to give up hope. We didn't want to do that with my parents either. But there is a point where a weak and aging body lacks the resilience. It lacks the ability to recover, right? And a recent example of this is I had a caregiver who was caring for her parents for more than 15 years, watching their health decline. And all of a sudden, both of the parents were in the hospital, maybe like 3 or 4 times in a period of 6 months. And the primary care physician said, maybe it's time to consider hospice because of all of these increasing health issues, and it's hard on your parents and it's hard on you. So the family thought, yeah, this would be a good idea. We get additional help, all of that. But then after they agreed, after hospice got signed up, the family all of a sudden had second thoughts because they're like, well, what if we made the wrong decision? And the family primary care physician was kind of backing away. And they're like, well, gosh, does the physician not really care about us anymore? Why is he just disappearing? Well, here's where understanding the aspects of healthcare decisions and healthcare programs and policies like hospice, right? It's important to understand how this works. So in a real world, rather than the primary care physician not wanting to be involved, right? It's more of a situation of the family, in this case, not understanding how hospice benefits work. If you go on a hospice benefit, basically you accept the medical director at the hospice to kind of take the place of your primary care physician. That's how it goes, right? So it wasn't that the primary care physician didn't care anymore. By healthcare guidelines, that physician couldn't be involved anymore, right? Because it's the hospice medical director who's making the decisions. And then also all of the hospice staff, the nurses, the pharmacy people, the CNAs, they replace all of the people in your primary care doctor's office, right? So in a sense, you're moving from like one care system to another. But when people sign up for hospice, they don't always understand this. Now, the other thing with hospice is you can always just say no. You can say, we tried it, we don't like it, we want to cancel hospice services, and then you go back to your primary care. So, but in this case, for this person's parents who were really just having a lot of health issues, hospice was helpful for not having them continually have to go to the hospital and, be stuck with needles and have treatments that really weren't going to make them feel better, right? It might make them feel worse. And so there's a lot of benefits that hospice offers for the people who need care and support for family caregivers. Now, the challenge in making any of these decisions is that the family caregivers often feel like, they've failed an aging parent if they can't continue to do all of these 10 million things that they're doing. Or, if the parent went on hospice and things don't work out well, sometimes things just don't work out and you have to make other plans, right? Nothing in life is guaranteed to work out. If you've been a caregiver, it's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of back and forth. But working through these changes to become less reactive and less of an emergency responder, to have all this crisis in your life, it's change. And change can be uncomfortable while you're moving to more positive steps, right? Honestly, the experience of transitioning through change, who likes it? Nobody likes it, right? Unless it's change that we want to do. And I'll use another example. So let's say that every Friday night you go and you meet friends at happy hour and you hang out and you have drinks. Well, one day you decide that, I want to pay more attention to my health because I'm seeing all this stuff that's happening with my parents and I don't want to be like that. And my only available time is Friday night. So I'm going to join a gym. And instead of going to happy hour on Friday night with my friends, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to exercise. Maybe I'm going to take a Pilates class or an exercise class or whatever. Or maybe I'm going to take up racquetball or tennis and I'm going to play with people at the club. Now, that change, right, changes your relationships. It changes your relationships with your friends who may think, wow, we're not as important. My friend doesn't want to come and have happy hour with us every Friday night. They're, going to the gym. Well, you can invite your friends who go to happy hour to come to you and join the gym and choose their health. And maybe they will and maybe they won't. And maybe to maintain those friendships, you got to find other ways to spend time together, which is not Friday night happy hour, right? But here's the other beautiful thing, right? You go to the gym, you want to be healthy. Who else is at the gym? Other people who want to be healthy. So maybe you make all of these new friends and then you start spending time outside of the gym to do healthy activities. Maybe you go for a walk or you hike or you bike or you water ski or you play football or whatever, right? You're doing other stuff. All this wonderful stuff comes in your life because you made this one decision to change, which you were worried about, and you still have connections with those friends. So in all of this crisis management and becoming this urgent care provider that you become as a caregiver, you can really get easily sucked in. But you have to make the mental choice to say, this isn't working anymore and I'm not going to do it. And so any type of change you're going to make is going to have like, oh, do I do this? Is it going to work out? It's going to have all these fears and doubts and all that kind of stuff. Just push through all that. Push through all that to get to the other side where it can be so much more positive. So when you think of ending, caregiving in times of crisis, realize you're going to have to adjust your routines, maybe even the time you spend with people. But it doesn't mean that it still can't be a positive relationship, right? So if you want to stop being that emergency responder, you got to do the three things, right? Put your life on paper, look at what you have to do versus what's good for you, look at the law of diminishing returns to kind of add some balance back into your life, and just be honest. Look at the hard realities of any situation. Stop making excuses for other people. Stop making excuses for yourself. Look at your contribution, what you can do, what you can't do, what you are willing to do, and start making those changes today. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Pamela D Wilson. I'm a caregiving expert, advocate, and speaker. My website is PamelaDWilson.com. On there, a lot of hope, help, and support. Please click below to like this video, follow my channel, comment so that other people can find their way here to receive hope, help, support, and find answers to many of the burning caregiving questions that you all ask and I respond to. Have a fabulous day. I'll see you all again soon in another video.